and we saw, everywhere we went,
Go ahead,
I
Sarah.
feel like we saw signs of climate change. We saw towns in North Carolina that, like at one town, a brand new school had been built, and then, they all have their hurricane stories. They had had a hurricane, and then it had been abandoned, and no one even considered rebuilding. They just said, why bother? It's just gonna come back. And it just seemed like everywhere we went, it was just very disturbed, and we started to feel like we're kind of insulated in the Midwest. We don't necessarily feel we're not on the edge of this climate change, but it means we need to be more aware of it. And then we were down in the Bahamas, had some friends. This is other wonderful friends of ours, a homeschooling family. More friends that we took sailing, we just had a great time. The Bahamas was in a deep drought, by the way. Then we came back, and if you recall, April of last year, that was the April where you just had storm after storm and like 50 inches of snow or something. Well, all those storms were coming out to the Atlantic and creating all this havoc in the Atlantic also. So luckily we got one 5-day window, and we sailed from the Bahamas to North Carolina with Natalie, another young adult. But then we were, go ahead, Cedar, we were going up the coast. There's a tradition of blowing the conch shell at dusk. So here we are in the Erie Canal coming back, and when we entered the Erie Canal, it was still the end of this storm, and people were actually telling us, don't come to Sault Ste. Marie, there's still snow. But we faithfully headed east because we had to get back, or west. So at the beginning of the Erie Canal, it was snowing, and then when we reached the end of the Erie Canal, about 8 days later, it was 90 degrees again. So it just felt like, what is going on? Like, what season are we in?
And then it went, the day that we headed out onto Lake Erie, after transiting the Erie Canal, when we put our mast up, it was like 90 degrees, literally, and humid and big bad thunderstorms. And then we puttered out and tied up for the night, and overnight that all went away, and it was 45 degrees and raining the next morning, and just blowing like crazy when we took off. And so it's, we just experienced all those sorts of extremes, and that's what was starting to catch our attention. Yeah.
All right, so then we got back and we decided it's really time to look this climate change thing straight in the eye. And when we really looked at it straight in the eye, it felt like we needed to do more than what we were doing. And so thus was born our idea of sea change, which is what we're doing now, which is over 3 different years, we're going to come to every port on Lake Superior. And at each port, we're going to just have events like this and talk about climate change and help people to understand what's happening on Lake Superior, and also help people to be motivated to take more steps than they've taken before.
So go ahead.
So our mission really, as I said, is to sail the whole lake and bring people together over discussions of climate change, and also mitigating effects, what we can do to mitigate climate change. Because even while we're learning the situation, we're also learning about all the people and all the things that are happening already to change that. And it felt like we'd actually been living in somewhat of ignorance for a long time, and so now it's time to really be on board. So here's what we do.
So we're going to circumnavigate Lake Superior over 3 summers, stopping at every major port, and conduct programs like we're doing tonight. We had a big homeschooling event this afternoon. We'll have 3 to 4 young adults or college students with us on each trip to help us. And then we also want to interview lifelong residents around the lake, just to see, as witnesses to climate change, or just experiences, hear their story. We're real interested in that. And we have yet to interview anybody from Houghton here, so we would love to get a suggestion or two of someone that we could get a hold of, or a couple people that we could interview before we leave. Okay, Cedar.
Here's kind of it's already outdated because this year, surprise, surprise, we've had extreme weather, so we haven't been able to do exactly what we planned. But we started in Knife River, and 5 days later, the ice was out, or 5 days, the day that we began our trip, the ice was out of the harbor, so we put the boat in the water, and thanks to our young adults who joined us and with the boat completely unready to go, we worked on it for 4 days and then had a weather window to go to Grand Marais. When we left, This whole thing was total ice, and all down here was total ice. Well, you probably know, I don't know if you guys were looking at ice charts, but there was ice everywhere. We couldn't come here, we couldn't pretty much go anywhere except Grand Marais. So we went to Grand Marais and waited another 5 days, and that's when Houghton opened up, and so then we sailed to Isle Royale just for a stopover, and then down here. We had planned to go to Marquette, but we had to skip that this year. We have to go next year because that's still in the ice. Yes. So our plan, assuming the ice is out enough, we're going to go to the Apostle Islands, then up around Isle Royale before going.